Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another video with Team and Ambitions, your one and only favorite team from the Pacific Northwest. Thanks for joining us once again. I'm Andrew. Joining us tonight, replacing Dylan, is Lewis Brown, the Bigolfish. Lewis, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Not usually the one to be on these finance videos, but I have a couple of opinions I think I can share.
Yes, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the finances. We're going to talk about Azurite Sea. Let us know if you have any thoughts or what your opinions are of these cards from Azurite Sea in the comment section. I think the biggest winner from this set isn't actually a legendary. It has been far and away the Genie Wish Fulfilled. I've never seen a card, I've never seen a rare this hyped in, like, since what, Maui? Be Prepared? Since like set one. Even something like Merlin Fox or Hiram, that I think when set two came out, Hiram was like around $10, but then everyone realized you can get it in a starter deck, and then it dropped. But we haven't seen a rare really hit the double digits in a very long time, and we have Genie now sitting pretty comfortably at $12 to $13. Lewis, what's your experience been with Mr. Genie here?
Genie is an excellent card. It will definitely be meta relevant. I expect it to be meta relevant for a long time. This price is dumb. The math doesn't math. You mentioned, just like you mentioned, like the highest, I believe the highest cost normal rare we've ever seen was Maui, who, like, at his peak, I think he might have, at one point he was like $20, but that was also silly. But he consistently is between $10 and $15. And he's one of the most played cards. He's still one of the best cards, but a lot of that has to do with the scarcity of set one. There is just less set one cards out in the wild than any other set. That's just a fact of manufacturing. So when the demand is driving the price, obviously that's how supply and demand works, but that demand is a little bit artificial because the actual supply of genies is not low enough to warrant this number.
And I think that's one of the biggest questions with this card is the supply. We know people are ripping open Azurite Sea. Like, we can see it on TCG Player. Like, there are stock of these cards, but the demand is crazy. Like, people are rushing to get their copies of Genie. Every purple variant runs this card. Green purple, 4 Genie. Red purple, 3 to 4 Genie. Blue purple, which isn't really around, or not as much around, but can always pick up steam. It's always been around. Needs Genie. A 2/4 with evasive that quests for 2 and draws a card. Turns out pretty good. It's very, very powerful. We already know it can be just like you play it after a Diablo and it can just immediately take that out. And if they don't, well, it's just an evasive, basically Surfer mini that let you drew a card. That's crazy.
No, there's no question about how strong the card is in the game. It is a great card. It is going to be played for a long time. It's not strictly better than Merlin Rabbit, but it's not worse than Merlin Rabbit either. They do a little bit different things, but that's like why the red-purple list you're seeing right now run a split of both for doing different things. It's a really strong card. I'm not surprised that it is a valuable rare when, like, a lot of the times a rare from any given quote-unquote bad rare will be like, 75 cents, whatever. I'm not surprised that's multiple dollars, but I already said this, but I'm just going to repeat it. The math doesn't math. And it's not that the supply is not real, because obviously people are buying the card, but there's a couple of factors. One, there's not really anything happening until the last chance qualifier in January. There's no more DLCs, so unless you were fortunate enough to get a ticket to that, that's like that's the next big event. Sure, of course, people have their normal locals, and if they're lucky enough, maybe they'll have like larger, locally hosted 1K tournaments or whatever. In which case, I'm very jealous of you. But it just doesn't make sense from a very basic economics standpoint. Like, this is economics 101. There are more. I'm just going to repeat myself from earlier. There are already more genies open now, I'm guarantee you, than there are Maui Heroes to all. Particularly because people are holding on to set one as like a sealed product investment. Azurite Sea boxes are plentiful. There is not a limited supply of them. You can go into your local game store. They will have boxes for sale. The product is there, and it It's just a reactionary impulse to buy because it's FOMO. I'm going to go ahead and use the acronym. It's FOMO.
I think we are pretty much in agreement that we're probably in the sell range for this card. If you have the cold foils, cool. Get rid of them. Sell them, get them later. I don't know how much the cold foil is really going to drop. I know that at one point this week, at one point last week, they hit $50 for some reason. They definitely sold at 30, which isn't too out of proportion. Like foil rabbits at one point were 25. Foil fox is about 25 now. So a foil rare can definitely get there. And genie being as high in demand as it is, like, yeah, if you have a foil genie, like, you can keep it if you plan to use foils, but also a solid $30 if you just want to let it go. But the rare genie, I could see this being very similar to like the Daisy Duck from last set, which at first it started in like the 14-15 range and quickly like tumbled downhill and like settled around the $5 range. That's probably where genie will live, would be my guess. So hey, if you can find trades to get rid of them at 14, go for it.
Yeah, I think Daisy is the perfect comparison. It was the immediate people recognized immediately. This card is good. This card is going to be played, and they're right. Daisy is a great card. It's one of the best one drops in the game. People absolutely play it in lots of different decks. But as you said, it did tumble from that initial hype down to a more reasonable, $5-6, which is where I think Genie should land. And I think that's an appropriate card. It is a really, really good card. There's no question about that. I think if you're buying or trading it at a value of 5 or 6, you're fine. Maybe it settles at like 7. That's like, that's kind of the ceiling for a normal non-foil rare, in my opinion. That's not from set 1, because like, again, even Be Prepared is, or maybe $8 or $9 now, and it's, a very ubiquitous card. So yeah, it's just like, I wouldn't buy them now. If you can sell them for full value, I certainly would, unless you want to play them at your locals, then obviously keep them. The foils, I'm not a foil guy, so I'll leave that to you to speculate. But I think that Merlin, Rabbit, and Fox are really good comparisons. Actually, they are tried and true cards. They're incredibly good. They've won many events. I expect them to continue winning many events, and even them, particularly when set 2 was not as wildly popular, was not opened as much, so the supply is actually lower. If they're in the $25 to $30 range, yeah, maybe that's where Genie belongs to.
Well, let's hop to another card in Azurite Sea that is probably more relevant for you and your favorite color combination. Well, I don't know if it's your favorite color combination, but at least in recent memory it is. That would probably be the Maui Half Shark. The legendary from the set, if we just go by strictly prices. This card's been kind of all over the place. It reached a low of $20 around the time, like a couple of days right after the set got released to the hobby stores. It is now released to all stores. And if anything, it has gone up. It is now sitting pretty at a $35. Truthfully, not a ton of lists playing this, so I'm not sure where the hype is coming from. Right now, the question is, does it fit in traditional red purple? Because that's probably one of the biggest entryways on, hey, is this card going to make it? And then the other side is like, is it going to fit in red blue? Because, hey, that will make it. The foil version of this card hitting $60. We haven't seen that level of hype since like Diablo. Lewis, is this a card of the level of Diablo?
Nope. And that was a kind of flippant answer. But the answer is no, in that if you're going to play Diablo, you're going to play for Diablo. If you're going to play Maui Half Shark, you're going to play some number of Maui Half Shark, between 2 and 4. Right now, I'm experimenting with 2 Maui Sharks. That's not like my original idea or anything. I think I stole that from some winning red purple list from something. But it's a card that's, for one thing, it is a strong card. Like 6 drop, 7/5 evasive. That's stats. That's beef. The fact that you get to recycle your actions is obviously quite good. Getting back to something just like a be friends on the other side. Oh, I can draw 2 more. Oh, you discard my Be Prepared? No, you didn't. I have it back in my hand. That's obviously quite good. 7/5 evasive will challenge, anything. There's not a whole lot that's going to be surviving that. It's good at getting rid of locations. Particularly for red purple, It is a proactive 6 drop, whereas before our 6 cost cards were the Sitting Red Ladies of Lady Tremaine and Madame Medusa, and those are purely reactive cards. We're playing them to do something else. You usually, unless like you're just trying to push for the win immediately, you don't want to play those on an empty board. Maui Shark, you just play him. He's a good dude on 6. He's hard to remove. 7/5 evasive. That's really tough to remove for a lot of decks. The only like clean removal I can think of is and then along came Zeus and Steel. Obviously there are other ways, but they're a little more difficult to get around. There's no amount of ice blocks are going to make him low enough for red blue to get rid of him with their Brawl or Medusa. So it's just a really good card. And then the third line of text where you gain a lore when you play an action just didn't need to be there, probably. I think it was already a perfectly playable card, but with that action, with that line of text where you get lore every time you play an action, that opens up a lot of different possibilities for the card. Like, yeah, in red purple, he's kind of a value machine. He's getting back your card draw. He's getting back your removal. He's just letting you control the board. But in other decks, maybe he's just how you win the game. Maybe, for example, the red purple burn version goes up to 6, and like they max out there, and then they start recycling their thievery. I believe it is the 1 cost action where your opponent loses a lore and you gain a lore. What if your opponent loses a lore and you gain 2 lore for 1 ink? And also you get to recycle that if they're foolish enough to give something for Maui to challenge. Like, that's a completely different kind of deck that is now viable because you have this end piece of not only winning you the game, but recycling you the cards that will win you the game. So I think a lot of his price is speculative right now. We don't have a ton of data to go off of. There have been a couple larger tournaments in the couple hundred people, which is awesome that that's happening, but like we just don't have a ton of data to go on. But like if you are evaluating the card from like a what could this card do in the future sort of perspective, Maui Half Shark is pretty future proof.
Yeah, it does feel like a card that will have staying power, unless it just gets even more power crept than what it is. Card that gains lore evasive and like just recycles actions and is inkable and fits into a red theme where you have a bunch of action cards that just kill things. Feels good. I do see red as eventually getting that card that we're all kind of looking for, that's similar to Grab Your Sword card. The magic equivalent is Pyroclasm, which I think it could go to red. It could easily go to steel too, but I think red is the one that probably needs it, and probably that would be the card that like pushes it over the top. Maui Half Shark is very, very curious. This one's a little bit harder to predict because at one point when it was at 20, it was an easy buy. When it hit 30, I think in my opinion it was like an easy sell, and here we are at 35. I don't know exactly what. I think that this might take a very similar path to Sisu. Sisu at first was pretty cheap, and then due to popularity in the deck kind of rose to $30, and then probably will settle around that like $17-18 mark. I think that's probably where Maui Shark will end up having a home, or it could be wrong and it's just going to keep going up, and then we're going to see $45 sharks. That's pretty frightening. From the cold foil perspective, I mean, you could sell 1 Maui Shark and get 1 copy of every other legendary from the set that isn't named Maui Shark. That is kind of wild.
Yeah, and something worth bringing up is the EV, the expected value of a box of Azurite Sea, can only go so high before the boxes themselves start getting more expensive. This is the first time we've seen, like, I would say 10 out of the 12 legendaries are some degree of playable. With 2 notable exceptions, both from the same franchise. I'm not even going to name them because anyone watching will surely be able to figure it out. Hercules. The rest of them are some degree of either are playable right now or in the future could be like that with the right shell around it that could easily be playable. So, which is why a lot of the legendaries are like hovering around $5, $6, $7, $8, whereas really bad legendaries of the past or the current bad legendaries are like $1 because no one cares. But in addition to having a large percentage of playable legendaries, we now have 3 non-legendary cards that are holding serious value in their non-foils. First being Genie, of course, then being Calhoun, and the third being the new Lilo, 2 cost in Amber. That's 2 normal rares and a super rare that are holding $5 plus prices, which is pretty uncommon. It's pretty rare. Even like some of the most ubiquitous, best super rares in the game, I'm going to go ahead and name Lady Tremaine and Madame Medusa because they're the ones I play with. Those are objectively good, high percentage meta share cards. Their non-foils are very rarely above $3. Even the best rares and super rares tend to not be particularly expensive, which is usually a good thing for people trying to get into the game. It's one of the positives about Lorcana, no question. Because we can name 5 specific legendaries. We can name, Maui Half Shark, Tiana, Simba, Yzma, and Baymax are all really good cards that are currently holding an amount of value, but that's not usually the case with legendaries, and because of that, your expected value when you open a pack of Azurite Sea is pretty good, because like any number of these options are like, oh, I made my pack value back. But when that is the case, what happens is, and you can look at other games, particularly Magic the Gathering, for examples of this, or Pokemon obviously is also great examples, is when people have an expectation that they are going to open the money, why would they sell the sealed product for MSRP? That doesn't make any sense. But right now, no one is trying to sell boxes of Azurite Sea for above MSRP. And I don't think they're going to, because I think people will not buy them. So that's just like another mathematical data point you can look at to be like, all of these prices at the same time cannot be sustainable.
I think that's fair. I think the EV, I mean, I've opened a lot of this set. The EV on a box has been the highest it's been in a very long time. I opened a fair amount of Shimmering Skies. I opened a fair amount of Ursula's Return. That was a mistake. Inklands is probably the most comparable because there were at least 4 top tier legendaries in that set going into the set.
Okay.
Robin, Ursula, Jim Hawkins, and one more that I just can't remember off the top of my head. Jafar. Yeah, that was
Jafar was incredibly. At one point, Jafar was pre-selling for like $50. The hype was incredibly real for Jafar.
Yeah. That set was really good, and a lot of the effects from that set are linger to today, and we still see a lot of those cards. Like Ursula's still relevant, right? This set, the amount of power that it has, even the one legendary that we got spoiled from the D23 set, Oswald, is in this set, and even that's holding value. Like we didn't expect that, and if anything, this set, Oswald being released, increased the D23 promo value of Oswald. It's like $100. It shouldn't be, but like that is wild. When a set is good, you can tell when the actual card gets released, the other version that already existed, that value goes up. Something's funny. And then you add the fact that Genie is good, Lilo is good. There's a lot of foil hits in this set, like foil Little Bird, Diablo, foil Sail the Azurite Sea. There's a lot of potential value in the set just from even cracking a box. And I don't normally say that.
No, 100%. I think set 3 is a good comparison, but I think set 6 blows it out of the water. You're absolutely right to mention, particularly, commons and uncommons like Sailor Azurite Sea or the new Diablo. Those foils are selling for more than some of the base legendaries. I think I looked up Sailor Azurite Seas in the foil version. I mean, the normal version is correctly like 25 cents, but the foil is like $7. Which is understandable. That's a really good card. I don't expect that card to stop being good anytime soon. But it just reinforces the point you made of like, even if you don't hit like a great rares in your pack, you might just hit a random foil or a common or uncommon. It's like, oh, never mind. This is better than most of the rares or legendaries I could have pulled. And that's crazy.
You kind of already alluded to the fact that the legends from this set are already very strong, but because of that, like we don't really, there's a lot of legendaries where people are a little bit more unsure about. You have a thought about which legendary might take a little bit of a spike? There's a lot of options. It's probably not Shark, because if it takes a spike, holy cow, we're talking like 40 $50.
I would say there are 3 that are worth keeping your eye on. The first is the legendary Genie. That card's effect is bonkers. We don't currently have a deck that like really facilitates it yet, but that is a very future-proof card. I'm sure if Dylan was here, he would have great examples of Magic cards you could compare to where they were terrible for years and years, but then suddenly a new set released and they spiked incredibly hard because the synergy suddenly was there. That effect is just insane. I don't think it's good right now, or if it is, I don't know how to make it good because I'm not that great at building decks. But it is easily a card that one day people will be like, oh, wait a minute. You printed this, but this legendary Genie from set 6 exists. What were you thinking? Following that, I would say Oswald. Even though right now he's already still good. I think he's between like 10 and $15-ish, something like that. But we haven't really figured out exactly how to break him yet. I mean, there's obvious stuff. Oh yeah, of course you want to flip your lucky dime, which like yeah you do, but that's not enough to build around yet. But similar to Maui Shark and to a certain degree Genie, that card is only going to get stronger and stronger the more item cards exists. Literally every set is going to make Oswald a little bit stronger until they finally print an item where it was like, you shouldn't have done that. You just broke the game because Oswald exists. And then the third one I would highlight is Yzma. Currently holding in like between $4 and $6, something like that. That's just an insanely strong effect. That's incredibly strong. A repeatable, potentially draw 3 is really good. It would make sense that you would try to even play that with the Genie. Right now, that deck doesn't work. But that is in a vacuum, that effect is so strong that it would not surprise me if someday she's good.
Yeah, I think I agree with all those. My thought was probably going to be like the second legendary that is in terms of price the highest. That's the Simba Pride Protector, I believe it's called. Really, really strong card. I think it's just not gotten the right shell for it quite yet. I see some people cooking with it in like an amber steel, just because you got two options for Simba and they're both amazing. Like you get the little 1-drop Simba in steel that just like you draw a card, you discard a card. That's already a strong effect. And then the other one's a Bodyguard 2/3, which is great when you have daisies in your deck. So I see a lot of potential with that card, and we'll see. I think it just takes somebody to like play it and actually a list have it. Like any of these, really. Like just one list that has the legendary as the spotlight card, and off we go, right? That's what happened with Ana from Zan Syed.
Oh, 100% agree. I agree with you that the 1 and 2 cost Simbas that you just mentioned are extremely playable cards in and of themselves. And you always got to keep in mind whenever they like, oh, this Simba is good. You got to start thinking about Pride Rock. If princes and kings are good, discounting ink is really good. Those kind of decks have always been like on the verge of being really good, and maybe someone will figure out how to make this shift Simba break it. And it is just a very efficient card. Good stats when you're shifting, strong effect if you have guys to protect, which you usually do if you're an Amber. Just a good card.
Let's talk about one of my favorite topics, Enchanteds. This set's Enchanteds, very polarizing. Very, very polarizing. We haven't had much of a chance to talk about it. Basically, the polarizing part of this set is one, the selection of some of the characters. Where is my Moana Enchanted? She had 2 cards that you could have picked. She's not on any of them. That was a missed opportunity in my opinion, but that's okay. My particular favorite Disney character will have to wait. But 2, they all look the same. They all have the like pirate map, like sepia kind of look. It's not bad. It's just different. So I mean, I personally like them. They look much better in person than they do, on paper or on the app. But let's talk about this, because this is one of the things I did not expect, is the order in which the prices are for these. I would not have expected that at the current moment, Baymax is the most valuable Enchanted. Now, I love Baymax. He is the best personal healthcare companion, and I personally like the art of all of them the best. But he somehow, one, he's not playable, at least in the current form. The other Baymax would be, but it wouldn't be as cool of a picture. And he's not a princess. He beat Tiana. He beat the Tiana princess curse. What do you think?
First of all, I agree that I also like the art direction. I like that they're mixing it up. I understand why people don't like them. I think that's totally valid. They are very samey. They're all the same color. I very much agree with what you said. They look so much better in person than they are on the app, or like looking at them on the TCG player or whatever. They really do shine, in person. In terms of why Baymax, I don't know. I'm a little stumped, to be honest. I know people like Baymax. I haven't watched that movie yet. I'm still catching up on Disney movies. I just watched Moana. I know. I'm a terrible Disney card game player, but I'm making my way through it. I also share your disappointment, though. Having now watched Moana, that was an incredible movie. I'm even more disappointed that there's not a Moana card, particularly like you said. There are really good Moana choices in this set. I would say that right now, and this is actually generally true, Enchanted prices are basically 100% vibes. And when I say vibes, I mean they are very easily manipulated for reasons that have nothing to do with like demand or like market price or whatever. People, because the supply of enchanteds is generally not particularly high, it's really easy for someone to just buy them all out, mark them up, like not a lot, just mark them up, $20-$30 more. And now suddenly they're the most expensive enchanted, which causes like a cascade effect of people like, oh my gosh, I should buy slash sell these right away. And it's just all vibes. It's enchanted like prices almost never make any amount of sense. Sometimes when it's like a truly playable meta card, like the Maui Enchanted, it's like, oh, that explains why it's as high. But would it even not be as high because people love Maui? There's just really no great way. Like the one data point we can really point to is the Enchanted Diablo. It's like a card as the character. Like, no, let's be real. No one cares about Maleficent's pet bird. But as a meta playable card, it is obviously very desirable to have. So that's like one of the few data points where it's like, no, its price is driven because it's a good card, not because people want that character's card. But otherwise, you see extremely playable cards with enchanted versions that like the Enchanted Lady Tremaine. Rarely has it been above $100. It's a pretty as enchanteds go, it's pretty inexpensive, despite her being a very playable meta card. It is all vibes and fairy dust and wishes, and that's all appropriate for Disney. But in terms of like, should you buy or sell Baymax right now? There's not a right answer, but I would say don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's a constant moving target. Like at one point, I think I traded away a Tinkerbell around set four. No, set five. Around set five, and it was like $250 at the time. And then literally right after I traded it, it was $500 because it was in I think Zan's list or somebody's list, some green steel or something. And then now it's back to where I got it from. It's impossible to predict. And, I don't have the money to manipulate the market. The people who do probably aren't caring too much about what they drop on these cards. But for the most part, y'all, we don't have too much advice for enchanteds. If you like an enchanted, you're completely justified in waiting. You're completely justified in getting it right away. Get it if the price makes sense for you. That is part of the entire system of supply and demand. Like, hey, it's only as worth as whatever someone's willing to buy it for, and that is only up to you to determine what that is. So it is just wild to me that right now, if you were to buy them in order in terms of value, your number one card would be Baymax, your number two card would be You Came Back, which is not in any lists right now, which is kind of wild to me.
I will say, shouting out You Came Back from a meta perspective, that card's a lot more interesting than it reads at first glance, because it's actually, like the legendary Ana, it's a modal card. It can do a lot of different things. Does your character want to quest again? Does your character want to challenge again? Does your character want to sing again? Does your character just not want to be exerted so that it's in less danger? It's actually a card that does like 4 or 5 different things, even though it only has that one line of text. So I don't know why the Enchanted is spiking. That's kind of weird, except people do love their Lilo and Stitch, so there's that going on. But in terms of meta playability, and I know this isn't a meta video, that card's interesting.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see if someone can cook with that one. I think it is interesting. It vibes to me as like a card that has a lot of potential, like kind of like, but I'm almost like putting it on the same level as something like a 99 Puppies. I know it's like really weird. It's like, yes, I see the play with this card. I don't know if it's going to manifest in the way that people think it will, but someone please prove me wrong, because I think it has a lot of potential as well.
I actually think that's a excellent comparison. Because yeah, it's like, oh, you can immediately see what you want or trying to do with it, but the difference between it and 99 Puppies is there's actually next level of like, okay, well, even when you can't do what you wanted to do, you can also do these other things, and maybe that'll be good enough. I don't know. I'm not a brewer. That's not my job.
I think that will mostly do it for our discussion about Azurite Sea. It's been a very funny start to the set. A lot of the market right now is, well, one, we just don't have another big event. Unless you are going to the LCQ, congrats if you are. If you're going to the North American Championships, you probably didn't need our advice on whether or not you should get these cards. But if you just wanted to like stomp out locals or, just have the best possible decks, like, there's a lot of options with this set. This set has been amazing in terms of like the variability that we've seen. Some decks haven't changed at all. Some decks have changed quite a bit, but that's good. That's the sign of a healthy set that brings new blood to the fold. Once again, everybody, if you have any thoughts about this set, please drop it in the comment section. We'd love to hear about it. Otherwise, we will see you at the next video. You all have a good night.